Welcome everyone tonight. This is our final session of our Grief Abode Academy. This is our sixth one, and it's just been so fun putting them on. And I think we've got some great ideas for the upcoming Abode Academies in the future. So tomorrow you're going to get a link to rate tonight's program. And if there's anything that you want to hear about, you have interest in, put that in there and we'd be happy to take a look because we're always looking for ideas. So tonight we're doing a little bit different. We won't have a guest speaker. We have two wonderful ladies that I got to know very well, who've experienced grief, who have gone through, one has been through her grief for a while, and one's pretty fresh, and they're going to kind of give us their spin on it and what it's meant to them. So they'll each kind of talk about their journeys. We'll do a little back and forth question and answer, and then I'm going to open it up to all of you to ask questions. And I'm sure they'd be happy to share what they've been through, because grief is hard. And I think these past 2 weeks, it's really taught me that, it affects us deep, deep in the brain. And some, more than others, but, Dr. Jeff's talk last week was very insightful for me anyway. Yeah. So I guess I will introduce both of them now, kind of give you a background, and then Mary, do you want to start when I get done?
Sure.
I'll put you on the hot seat first, okay?
Okay. All right.
Okay. So as you all know, my name is Beverly Tumala. I'm a hospice nurse, and I'm the president of the board for ABODE, and I also chair the education committee. But during the day, I wear my hospice hat, and I see people at home. And I met these two ladies caring for their husbands, and they're both widowed now. And Mary, I took care of her husband, Waid, and she can tell you how long he was on hospice. It was quite a few months. And she's gonna talk about her journey. And then Deanna's, I took care of her husband, Lloyd. And Lloyd was a patient of mine for a period of time. And wonderful men. We had a lot of fun, just talking. They were both characters and very caring people, and always wondered and always worried what their death was going to do to their loved ones, Yeah. So I'll turn it over to Mary. And Mary's going to start. She's going to tell us about Waid Rogers. Okay, Mary.
Well, Beverly asked me from the beginning, how did I meet Waid? And Waid was sitting next to me in Christ Episcopal Church Sunday afternoon at Mozart's Requiem. And it was the last place in the church to sit. I had no idea who he was. And he came just a little bit late because the church was packed. I mean, there was really no place. There was only standing room, but he found a place next to me. And I handed him my program, and we started chit-chatting a little bit. And then when we got up to leave, he introduced himself and I introduced myself. And he saw somebody that he knew, and he waved to him and he said, "That's one of my fellow surgeons." And I said, "You're a doctor?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, where do you work?" And he said, I'm chief of surgery at the VA, and I'm one of the professors of surgery, vascular surgery at the university. I'm one of the founding faculty. And I said, "That's really interesting. I'm a nurse and I work across the street from you." And so, he walked me to my car. He was a nice guy and I knew nothing about him. And within a week, I got a letter in the interdepartmental mail handed to me by my boss. And it was a letter and an invitation, and it was 2 free symphony tickets, and couldn't he please join me going to the symphony? So my boss was reading over my shoulder and she said, "Wear black with pearls, go home and call him now while he's still in his office. And, so I made the date with him, and we had a wonderful first date. We laughed the whole time. We went to the symphony, and but beforehand we had dinner, and we had my favorite thing for dinner, reservations. And so it was just delightful. And we both had kind of the same sense of humor, kind of doctor nurse sense of humor. And we knew a lot of the same people when we were sitting in the symphony. He would say, do you know him? I said, well, yes, I've worked with him. Well, he was one of the residents. Do you know him? Yes, I know him. Do you know her? Yes, I do know them. I have worked with them. And so we knew a lot of the same people. And so it was delightful. So he asked me out again. We went to a play at the San Antonio Little Theater. And at the end of the evening, he asked me to marry him. And it was like, wow. And I said, we don't really know each other very well. I said, first of all, this is how old I am. How old are you? And I said, and I was like, oh, this is not good, because he was 28 years older than me. I had no idea. And then the next thing I said was, you really don't know me. You might not like me in 6 months, but if you still do, please ask me again in 6 months. So within 6 weeks, we were engaged. We the right thing, and that we were meant to be together. So we had a really, really fun time together. Our courtship was about a year. We were engaged almost a year. And, he was widowed. His wife had died of cancer of the breast about 6 months before I met him. And so I knew that he was still grieving. And so that was a really interesting time to learn about grief, because, we had this understanding that he could always talk about Jean, that she was always welcome in our conversations, that we could, she was part of the family, and that don't ever exclude her, because I was completely comfortable with her, being there in his heart and mind, because how could she be anywhere else? And so anyway, I always enjoyed Jean's stories, and we had a lot of fun with that.
And Jean was his ex-wife?
Was his first wife, yeah.
And she died?
She died 6 months before I met him. So anyway, that was a really interesting thing. We moved into the house that they had, but I did that with the understanding that we'd completely change everything, because my colors, some of my stuff would be coming in, etc. So it worked out really well. We lived there for about 18 years before we downsized when our daughter was a sophomore in high school, and we wanted her to be in a new house and feel like that it was hers when she came home from college. So we did that before she graduated. But anyway, I started noticing, and that was why we moved. I started noticing that Waid was shuffling his feet, and he was starting to have problems with his memory, and he had given up, tennis by then, because he couldn't really move very well anymore. And he had a number of surgeries, hip surgeries, and he had a AAA repair, it was abdominal aortic aneurysm repair. He had several vascular surgeries. I mean, we had really, and I had my cardiac issues, so we really were patients a lot. But because we were doctor and nurse, we kind of just rolled with it. But we moved into this house because he was starting to show signs of not being able to go up and down the stairs. And I knew somebody was going to fall down the stairs. And as it turned out, it was me, not him, before we moved out of it. So it was a blessing to have a one-story house. So that was kind of the beginning of me noticing his decline. His memory started failing. He started slowing down. And during this time, somewhere into it, 2015, he needed to have his aortic valve replaced. And with some dementia, I was kind of concerned about having an open procedure. So we ended up going to Houston, and he had a TAVR procedure, which is where they go in through the groin. They do it laparoscopically. They don't do it, open. And so he did really well after that, and for a while. And it gave us about 5 better years. So then, oh, he started to just, his memory started really getting bad. He started falling, he, balance, just little things. And then I noticed that he couldn't see very well. So we had his eyes fixed. He had cataract surgery. And then he just couldn't focus anymore to read, and he just couldn't read. And that's when we got him on hospice care. And that was 7 months. We were in hospice care 7 months. And then I watched this steady decline. And that was, it's hard. You lose them little by little. And over a period of time, there's more and more that's required of you. I'm sure you know that if anybody is taking care of someone with dementia or Alzheimer's or with some kind of a debilitating kind of disease, they just start little things here and there, and then it becomes more and more and more. There's incontinence that happens. There's, just more falling. There's appetite changes. There's just all these things that happen. It's a cascade of things as the brain starts dying. So anyway, that was kind of a tough journey. But the good news is that during this time, he only did not know who my daughter and I were one afternoon. Otherwise, he always knew who we were. And then shortly before he died, he had a stroke. I was on the phone. I came back in. There was a caregiver with him, and Wade's words were just garbage. I mean, they were just gargled. And so anyway, we couldn't understand him. And that was a tough one. But he got about 30% of his language back before he died, before he couldn't speak, before he really couldn't speak at all. And then about 2 weeks before he died, we had this episode of his daughters were here. We were all just having dinner. He didn't want to eat anything. He couldn't eat anything at that point, but he didn't mind with us sitting with him while we ate. And he was laughing. It was a belly laugh 2 weeks before he died. So, I felt like it was a little bit here and there, the steady decline, but yet there were moments of absolute joy. And that was one of them. And another one was, there was one afternoon, my friend wanted to come over and have a gin and tonic. And so we sat with Waid while he was in his hospital bed. And I said, Waid, would you like a sip of my drink? And he said, yes. And I put a straw in it, and he just took the whole thing in one drink. And so I said, well, I guess I need to go make myself another one. And he was so happy, this big, big smile on his face. So, there were, as I said, there were moments of joy. And then when I was awake with him in the night, I remember praying with him. We would always say the Lord's Prayer. And then one night I held his hands and I said, think of all the things these hands have done. And so we talked about all of the things that, the surgery and sculpting. He was a sculptor. He was a photographer. He was, he raised 4 kids. He held the hands of both Jean and me. I mean, he did all of these incredible things. He was in the Navy. He was incredible. Played tennis. So we had this wonderful, joyful conversation about all the things he had done, kind of in a life review. And that was a really, really good thing. So as far as my grief, when he died, of course, the hard part was when he left the house. That was the worst part for me. And then we waited about a month before we had his memorial service. And that was really helpful because it was during the holidays it was right before Thanksgiving that he died. And then we had his memorial service early in December. So that really helped to have that period of time to kind of collect myself, to kind of get myself organized and to plan his service. And that was really helpful. And his kids were really helpful. So that was all okay. And I did okay starting in March of 2020. I was starting to travel. I mean, the end of February, the first part of March of 2020. And then for days we were in lockdown. And you know what? That was probably the best thing that could have happened to me at that time, because we were isolated. I was alone, and most of the day, my daughter lives here, but she works, in her office, all day. So I didn't really see her much except for maybe at lunch. But, I sat with it, and I sat with my grief, and I sat with not having him with me in our environment where he should have been. And I got used to it. And I figured out what I should be doing with my time, what I should be trying to figure out things I wanted to do. And Beverly had said, well, during this period of time, she said, would you consider volunteering at ABODE? And I said, yes. Waid and I had, we were at the very first fundraiser. We had met Edwin Sasek, and we had really gotten acquainted with the concept of ABODE. So we watched its progress. And we were at the first fundraiser. And so I hadn't really had contact with them because of Waid and how busy I was with him during that time. And so that was one of the things that we did once things started opening up. My friend and I, Diane, who was also encouraging me to go to ABODE. So we did, and that was really, really helpful. If you have something that you find really important to look forward to, that you're accountable to, is a really important thing. And the other thing that helped me was my church, because my pastor is just an adorable human. And he did Waid service, and he encouraged me, of course, to come to church. And people were very, very loving. I hadn't been to that church for probably 10 years. Waid continued in Bible study there, but it was really helpful to just have that invitation to be welcomed. And that was another thing that really got me engaged and involved. So anyway, I feel like probably the biggest surprise that I've had in this journey, two things. First was, I didn't think that his kids would be as affectionate and loving towards me as they have been. That has been just the biggest gift and surprise to me. We've always had a pretty good relationship, but the fact that I'm invited to all the birthday parties, I'm invited to, family things all the time. And I was at the great-granddaughter's baptism a couple of weeks ago. I'm going in a couple more weeks to another great-granddaughter's 5th birthday party. And it's wonderful. So that's been a great surprise. And his son comes about once a month to visit. So that's been another really good thing. Another surprise, not so good, was during the time that I was in lockdown, I started I wasn't depressed, but I found that the way that my mind worked, the way that I looked at things was different. There was an old friend who I had called her and told her that Waid had passed. And she said she was coming to the memorial service. I didn't expect it. She lives in Austin. I did not expect that, but I just needed for her to know that Waid had passed. And so she said, we're coming. Then she called about a week before, and she said, I just wanted to tell you that, there was a kind of a conflict of times, and my really best friend is going to be going through her revows with her husband. And so we're not going to come to Waid's memorial service. We're going to stay, and we're going to do this other thing. Well, the way that I heard that was, there is something I would rather do for somebody that I like better. And it was about Waid. It was like, these people are more important than Waid. And I went ballistic. I mean, I didn't say anything to her, but I just deleted her from my life. And I still don't want anything to do with her. And that really surprises me, because I've not been like that. I've not been like that. So I feel like that this experience has changed me in that way, is that I have firmer boundaries that, and I'm more intolerant of a slight like that. So maybe it will change. It's been 3.5 years. So maybe that will change, but so far it hasn't. So anyway, I probably have talked more than 15 minutes.
That was wonderful, Mary.
Thank you.
Waid was very special, and you know, the love that you guys had was genuine, and I really thank you for sharing that. So I'll let Deanna talk about her journey, and then when she's done, I'll kind of go do some questions with you guys and kind of dig a little deeper. Okay, so Deanna's is next, and I was Lloyd's hospice nurse for, oh God, 7 months?
5 months.
5
From
months.
June until November.
Okay, yeah. And, you know, just going to visit with him, and he'd share his stories, and the care that these two had for each other. You know, she stayed home. She was able to stay home with him as he got sick, and she worked from upstairs, and he always knew she was upstairs, and said, you know, she'll be done with work soon. But anyway, Deanna, tell us about Lloyd.
Thank you. I would be happy to. He was quite an interesting person. He was born and raised in Beaumont. He was born late in life to his parents. He had all of his siblings were grown and had 2 of them, I think, had families of their own. So he was kind of a munchkin that was running the streets most of the time. But we met through mutual friends in 1976. I was 22 and he was 39. And for a long time, for several weeks, we didn't know how old the other one was, which was probably a good thing. And then after one of our friends spilled the beans to him, he was shocked, but we both decided that we had already been dating and getting along, and we really enjoyed each other's company. And I was more mature and he was kind of silly, and we just got along so well that it was just age. It was just a number. It didn't really matter. So we met in October of 76, and he turned 40 in November, which was crazy idea to me at 22, because he was almost as old as my parents. And we got married the following July. And then he worked for IRS at that time, and we eventually moved to Denver. We lived in Denver for a while, had our 2 sons. When we were dating, we almost broke up because he had a son from his first marriage, and he told me that he didn't want any more kids. I said, okay, that's fine. I do. See you later. And so he came to a party that I was at later that night and kind of dragged me out and said, okay, maybe I can change my mind. And so sure enough, we have 2 boys. He has a son who lives in Rockport with his family. And then we have 2 sons, and I'm lucky that they both of my sons live in San Antonio. One lives just down the street from me. So that's pretty cool. And together we have three grandchildren. So his granddaughter's getting married in September. So that's pretty exciting. But we love to travel. He retired from IRS, or from civil service, in 92, and really wanted to do his photography full time, and was a little nervous about it. You know, how can I support my family? Because we still had young children at the time. And said, you know, what's the worst thing that could happen? If you'll either be super successful or it won't work and you'll have to go find a regular Monday through Friday job. So he tried it, and sure enough found his niche in commercial photography, and he worked for the Marriott a lot. He worked for Eli Lilly on some of their corporate trips and so forth. We got a lot of free trips. It was pretty cool. And he loved it. He did that from 1992 until I guess about 2018. when I wasn't comfortable with him driving late at night anymore. So it was time to hang it up. But yeah, he's had, growing up in Beaumont, there's so many carcinogens in the Beaumont area. But he had a heart attack in 2000. And at that time, we discovered that he had an aortic aneurysm just above his aortic valves. So he recovered from the heart attack and then had to go back in 30 days later and have all of that replaced and redone. And so survived that, did really well. And then a few years later, was having some neurosymptoms. Anyway, we discovered that he had a mass on his right kidney. And it was a fluke that we found it. It should have killed him, but we were able to do a nephrectomy and capture it and moved on. And then he had another heart attack. I don't remember the year, but he had another heart attack and recovered from that. He had a stroke, recovered from that, not a lot of deficits from that, just constant. Then he was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2012 and did pretty well, did radiation and saw a great oncologist and great urologist. And we rocked through that. He did really well until about 2 years, I guess, before his death. And then we discovered that he was beginning to have mets to his spine and possibly to his brain. So the last probably year of his life, he was in a lot of pain. And so managing his pain and not really able to be as mobile and active as he always had been. This man used to go and ride bicycle races, some of the long 50-mile, 100-mile bicycle races when he was in his 70s, and never was a fast bicycle rider, but he finished and could do it. And it's a funny story how he got started with that, because our youngest son, was injured in Iraq in 2006. And part of his rehab was to ride a bike. My brother-in-law was a huge bicycle rider and got him suggested that he try riding a bike as therapy for his leg. And my husband, who was then, I guess, in his late 60s, early 70s, said, well, I can't let him go out and ride by himself. I have to go. He says, I can't keep up with him, but at least I'll be there. And so he went to Target or Walmart or somewhere and bought a Schwinn bicycle and started going when my son would go and ride his bike out on somewhere out towards Castroville, and rode with him and really got into it and started doing some of the races and so forth. But I always thought that was pretty cool that he was that kind of dad, that it's like, I might not be as fast as you and I might be a whole lot older, but by golly, I'm going to give it a shot. And he was a funny guy. When I used to sleep upstairs because I worked night shift for a long time. And so I would sleep upstairs and he would sleep in our master bedroom, and especially the last 2 years of his life. And one night I had helped him go to bed and get him all settled and all comfortable. And I opened the front door, probably to check for Amazon packages, and a bird flew in our front door, just one of those little barn swallows, just a little tiny bird flew in the front door. And I thought, oh my gosh. And so I got a broom and I'm chasing this bird all over the house, trying to get it to go out. I opened up all of our French doors. Our houses got French doors down the side. Opened up all the doors, opened up the front door, and I'm chasing this bird upstairs, downstairs, chasing this bird everywhere, trying to be quiet at the same time. Finally got the bird, probably 20 minutes, finally got the bird to leave. And I walked in there to check on him to see if I had woken him up. And I said, oh my gosh. And he says, what were you doing? And I said, well, there was a bird in the house. I was chasing it with the broom. He said, well, I saw you with the broom. I was wondering where you were going. And I said, that's not fair. But it gave me quite a chuckle for a long time. But he passed away. He did very well. He didn't like being weak. He didn't like being needy. He didn't, even though I'm a nurse, I've been a nurse for over 20 years. He didn't like for me to take care of him. I heard a podcast the other day that said men don't want to be perceived as weak, especially by their significant other. And I thought, that's it. He was fine with, of course, the young girls that came to tend to him from the hospice group. He was fine with them coming and helping him get a shower and get clean. They were amazing. They were magical. And but he didn't like for me to help him with a shower and so forth. But that made a lot of sense. So in a hospital bed for probably the last 2 weeks, I would say, Beverly. I think about the last 2 weeks. And that was hard on him. And but when he decided to go after several visits from our pastors and a lot of prayers and a lot of visits from family, he was just gone one day. He just was gone with two of his boys and daughters-in-law, one grandbaby, and me. We were there at his bedside to tell him it was okay to go. And that was on a Thursday. His birthday was the following Monday. And we decided, okay, we're going to have a celebration of life. Even though it's fast, we're going to do a celebration of life on his birthday, which we did. And my boys and my daughter-in-laws took over. They handled everything. They took care of everything. They made all the arrangements, and it was perfect. And he had a lot of specific ideas about what he wanted, and amazingly what he did not want. And he even told our pastor, at first he didn't want a service at all. And the boys told him, no, we really think you deserve a service, and we want the opportunity to celebrate you. And he kept telling our pastor, okay, but nothing fancy. I don't want anything fancy. So it was anything but fancy, but it was very nice. The boys did a great job. All three boys got up and talked about him and only had good things to say. So I think that's a pretty good accomplishment if your children get up and talk about you at your service and they only have good things to say. I think that's pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah. Grief journey. The journey for grief for everybody is different. Everybody takes a different passage. And I don't think that grief is anything that ever goes away. I think you just learn to adjust your life and create a new life. I went into therapy fairly quickly, within just a few weeks, and visited with a therapist for about 3 months. And because I didn't feel like I was grieving enough. And she said, there are no rules. Mm-hmm. There are absolutely no rules for grief. Everybody does it their own way. And she said, this whole thing of it's a pattern and it's a step-by-step process. That's BS, because you might be here and then tomorrow you might be over here. And then something can happen and you're going to be back here. It's a process. It is a process, but it's an individualized process. I think the hardest thing for me, the first hardest thing was I had a lot of photographs that we used at the service, and I had just slapped them into really inexpensive dollar store picture frames that I had. But later on, after the service, I wanted to put them in nicer picture frames. So I went to not Michael's, Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to get these 8x10 frames, which that was more his thing than my thing, but being a photographer. And so I'm trying to shop for picture frames, and I can't make up my mind. I don't know what to pick. And I had a complete, total meltdown, panic attack in the middle of Hobby Lobby. And I heard this voice in my head say, you don't have to do this today. You can do this next week. You can do this next month. You can do this 10 years from now. There are no rules. You don't have to do this today. And so I left, and sure enough, about a month later, before Christmas, I went back and it was fine. But I think I never could move back into our master bedroom because that had become kind of his room. That's where he died. I just had not been able to move back into that room, into our bed. I couldn't do it. I tried, but I couldn't. And so I redecorated. I got rid of the furniture. I bought all new bedroom furniture. I had the room repainted, redecorated. It's now pink and white. It's gorgeous. It's my room. But the funny thing is, I had the hardest time picking out colors, what color I want. I had like 9 samples on the wall, trying to decide what shade of white I wanted. And I couldn't decide. And I could hear his voice. I suddenly realized it's because I've never had to pick up paint colors before, because he was such an artist and had such an eye for color and knew what would work and what wouldn't work. I would tell him what I wanted, then he would pick out the color and execute and get it painted, and it would be perfect. And I struggled for 2 weeks trying to pick out a stupid paint color. And I finally heard his voice one day say, "It's just paint." One, and move on. If you don't like it, you can repaint. Just move on. And so, yeah, I did. And I really like it. And so that's helped a lot. But I think going to a therapist for me helped me a lot, because she reassured me that I couldn't do it wrong. There was no wrong way to grieve, that it's different for everybody. I have a good friend who's been a widow for 6 years, and she told me, she said, especially right at the beginning, get a shower every day and get out of the house every day. Even if you just drive to the grocery store or drive somewhere, but get out of the house every day. And I think that does help. You have to move forward. It's not that you move on, it's that you move forward, and you gain a voice, and you learn because for me, I had been with him for 46 years. I had been at my parents' house essentially for 18 years, and started dating him when I was 22. So we had had a joint life together for 45, 46 years. And now at 68 years old, what is my life going to look like? What do I want? What do I, as a single person, I hate the term widowed. I'm a single individual person. What's that going to look like? And the therapist really helped me walk through that journey and get some direction. And yeah, so that, for me, that helped me a lot.
Wow.
My friends and my family, my boys are amazing.
Yeah,
Anyway,
they really are.
yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you both. It was such a privilege to walk the walk with you and be on that journey with you both.
You were such a huge help.
Yes, she was. I want you all to know that that Beverly has a nickname. So when the hospice person came to get Waid signed up for hospice, he whispered, "Waid's nurse is drop dead gorgeous. I just want to warn you." And I said, "Okay." So I said, "Waid, your nurse is gorgeous." And I said, "Something to look forward to." So there was one day when Beverly was at the house and Waid was in the shower, so she had to wait. And I said, "Beverly, I just want you to know that you have a nickname." And she said, "Really? What?" And I said, DDG. It stands for drop dead gorgeous. And then I told her the story. So this is DDG.
Yes, he did. He called me DDG.
Yeah, DDG. We all called her DDG. And I would say
That's
DDG is coming, or DDG is here, or
Yeah,
something.
but I will say my first nickname from Waid was the poopy patrol nurse.
Oh, yes.
When I met him for the first time, and Lloyd, I always tell them, I'm going to ask you every visit if you pooped, and hospice rules, you have to poop every 3 days. That's just the way it is. And Waid just looked at me, Dr. Waid Rogers, and said, "Oh, so you're the poopy patrol nurse?" And I said, "Yes, I am." Oh, that was just beautiful. So let's go back to the moments of their death. Um, since both of these gentlemen had chronic illnesses, and we went on a long journey of decline. Did you feel that shock the moment it happened, like disbelief, or was it more of a relief?
You helped me a lot because my ER nurse kept kicking in and wanting to do things to help.
Yeah.
I think I even asked you, I told you, I need suction. I need a suction. I don't know where I was going to get wall suction at my house, but anyway. But yeah, I don't know. I was in such a fog
Yeah.
when he died, and he went so quickly that day. He hung on, all of a sudden he couldn't breathe. And I was digging, looking for a mask. I needed a non-rebreather. I need this and I need that. And you're like, no, you don't need any of that stuff. And so, yeah, but when that morning, he was a little more confused, and I put the oxygen back on him and went in the kitchen to kind of clean up the breakfast dishes and so forth. Probably out of the room for 20 minutes. And I went back into the room, and he had started the gurgling and the working harder to breathe. And I called you immediately and said, what do I do? What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And you said, give him some morphine. And yeah, this is probably it. And called my youngest son and said, you got to come now. And they got there quickly. And then he just drifted away and quit breathing. And we held his hand, and we told him, it's okay to go. We've got this, and it's okay to go. We release you. And our pastor had been there just the day before and talked to him and given him communion and told him the same thing. What's waiting for you is amazing, and you're okay to go. You are good to go.
Good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was hard when they rolled him out of the house. Yeah. And I still remember the one thing I did, which still shocks me, but I went over to him and put my hand on his face, and I said, "Oh, he's so cold." And it's like, well, duh. Yeah. But that was shocking to me that he was so cold.
It's so cold.
And yeah, but anyway.
Wow. What about you, Mary?
Well, that was a really interesting time. We knew that in the morning that was going to be his last day. So I baked a pie, so it smelled good in the house, and I knew people were coming. And I called his kids, and his daughters were, on their way. And one of them walked in, and soon before he died, the other daughter lives in Houston. And then the son had been there the weekend before, so he wasn't coming. But so I let her in, and then I turned around, and there was another knock on the door, and it was our minister. So we went in and saw Waid, and the minister said a prayer over Waid. And as soon as the prayer was over, Waid died. He quit breathing. And my first response was, I wanted Waid to be in a position where, he was comfortable, looked at rest. I mean, it was the nursing thing that you wanted to care for your patient instead of, this was my husband. I wish I could have just not have been the nurse.
Yes.
That's my regret.
Yes.
That I didn't just just take a deep breath and just
Be in
take
the
a
moment.
moment and be in the moment. Instead, I was running around looking for a stethoscope to see if his heart was
Yes.
still beating.
Yes.
And I wanted to be the nurse. And it was so strange. I kept thinking, I don't want him to get into rigor mortis. I want him to be comfortable, and I want him to be, it was really strange, but it was sort of my mindset at the time.
Yeah.
So I just have to forgive myself that I was the nurse, and at least
Yeah.
tried to be the nurse.
You went someplace safe. That's what you did. You both did.
Well, we went somewhere where we knew what to do.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
As a
And it
spouse
was-
of a dying person, you've never been there before, so you don't know what to do. And as a nurse, you've taken care of dying patients before, and I know what to do. I know I didn't have any of the equipment. I didn't have a crash cart. I didn't have anything, but I knew what to do as a nurse to take care of a dying patient. As a spouse, I had no clue.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a real good point. So, what advice would you give to others going through this?
After the fact,
After the fact.
after the fact, after the fact, you do you. You don't do what everybody expects you to do or says you should do. You do you, and you do whatever feels comfortable. I love to travel, and I decided I'll travel by myself. If I decide I want to go somewhere, I'm going to travel by myself. And some of my friends and my family were like, "Oh no, you can't do that." Yes, I can. I can do anything I want to do. And so yeah, that would be my advice. Make it your journey,
Mhm.
find your own voice, and do you. Don't do what anybody expects you to do
Good one. How about
or
you, Mary?
tells you to do.
So ahead of time, I wanted to make sure that I was trying to do everything so I wouldn't have any regret. I wanted to say the things I needed to say, to do the things I needed to do. I didn't want to live with that. So I felt like, except for, acting like the nurse at the end, I didn't really have a lot of regret. I was comfortable with that. But with the thing with COVID that kind of shut everything down, it did help, but it also hindered. Because what happens is you get really, really comfortable at home and not being around people. So you kind of get reclusive. So I've had to kind of draw myself out again. I'm like you, I like to travel, and I like to go and do things. So I'm starting to do that. This year in particular, I'm starting to do that. Once the airlines last year was kind of a problem. So I didn't really want to travel then. So this year I'm traveling more and doing more and getting more involved with the things that are important to me. But yeah, do you, that's what's important. Do what's comfortable. The other thing that's really weird is, and I can relate to not being able to make a decision, because that's still probably one of those things I struggle with, is coming down to making decisions. So I'm trying to work on that. But the other thing was, I wanted to take my wedding rings off almost immediately. It's like, I am no longer married. He is gone. I have to get used to this. So that was kind of my signal of, there's a change here. But recently, I went to the bank and I got my rings out of safety deposit box, because now I wanted to put them back on. I know he's gone, but I'm still, he was my husband. And until I die, or unless something changes, he's still my husband. He was my spouse and my life partner. And I'm comfortable with that. So I put my rings back on.
I have an anniversary ring that I got and I bought it and paid for it for my 30th anniversary. And I love it. It's one of my favorite pieces of jewelry. And I don't think anybody said anything to me, but I thought, oh gosh, I guess I have to take it off now. No, I don't. I like it. I enjoy seeing it on my hand, and I will wear it.
I think you should.
I like
Um,
all the memories attached.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So Mary wrote in the chat, we often hear, don't make any major decisions for at least a year. Do you think that's good advice?
I think that's
Yeah.
excellent advice.
Excellent.
Yeah. Brain fog and irritability. Can you relate?
Oh, yeah.
And you tend to do knee-jerk reactions, thinking it's gonna, if I just sell this house and move into something smaller, it's gonna make me feel better. No, to me, that would make me feel so much more detached. And yeah, I've seen people do it and heard of people doing it, but yes, definitely. And money-wise, just don't make any crazy decisions about money and investments and let it ride.
Yeah, for sure. So let's open it up to questions. Does anyone have any questions out there? Yes. Go
Me?
ahead, Wayne.
Okay. Hi, Dorothy. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
I just wanted to say, I was about to write this in the chat. Both of you are nurses, and you felt very comfortable with your husbands at home and helping
Yes.
them pass. The more I'm a lay person, both Sandy and I are lay people. For some reason, that doesn't sit well with me. I just don't, I think for me, and Dorothy, I related to what you said about not being able to sleep in your room, in your bedroom. And because of that, I really felt that my next place is a hospice place. My resting place will be away from the house. So that way it creates sanctuary for my wife and my kid and my family and my cats. Is that isn't wrong, is it? I mean, I think it's right.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I
No, you
think
do it.
you do whatever works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just something that for me, I felt like, I could see that you guys did it very easily. It's very simple. You got that nursing mentality. You can do that. You know what to do. You know what to. And for me, I just felt that if Sandy were in the position of having to take care of me and do everything else, it would just be too hard. And I don't know how she feels about it. I don't know if she feels the same way I do, but I know that for me, that's probably what I would do. So thank you.
It's interesting, Wayne, too, in hospice, when we go in and talk to people about their end of life plans and what they think is going to happen, many will say, I don't want to die at home.
Yeah.
Is there someplace I can go? Yeah.
My father died in hospice, and it was just because my mother, he was a big man, and my mother and I together didn't feel like we could take good care of him at home.
Yeah.
And so we had him placed in a hospice facility, and they were wonderful.
Yeah. Because of our relationships we helped Sandy's parents die. One of the smart things we did was we got long-term care insurance, because we just know, aging society, all that bit. I mean, what happens if I'm not there and she needs help? What do? You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And people don't talk about that enough, because by the time they start talking about it, it's too late to get it. So,
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
I love what Mary said about doing for others, volunteering at ABODE and helping others. Mary helped you heal your heart. And I found that to be true for myself as well.
That's one of the things that I noticed about people. I had a lot of time to think about this. How do people that lose their spouse, how do they successfully recuperate from their loss? How do they successfully move forward? And the ones that have done the best volunteer, they get involved in their church, they develop hobbies of themselves that they've enjoyed. And I think that, I had that in mind. So I had something to kind of I don't know, it's kind of a blueprint of the ones that were successful in getting along. But I do agree about changing the master bedroom. That's the first thing I did, was move it around. Wade's daughter's an interior designer, and when she came, I said, you need to do something for me. You've got to move this bed around. You've got to change this room so it does not look anything like it did. That was really important. I think that that's kind of, I think that's probably universal for most people.
I want to second that. When my husband died in January, a long time ago, and in April, I totally remodeled my house. Totally. Got some new furniture, painted, put in new flooring, new countertops. Yeah. Yeah. And it was my house. But I'll tell you, my children were furious. My son came home from college or from grad school, I don't remember, and he didn't recognize the house. And so it wasn't his house that he was used to. And that was very upsetting to him.
And it probably disrupted his grief.
Yeah. Yeah. And he really grieved, but he had to go back and to LA and stuff. But yeah, he was very, this isn't this isn't my house anymore. And what have you done with all the stuff and all of that? Yeah.
Interesting.
I think it also helped with the grief by the fact that Waid was here in the house. I feel like that was something that it was a goal of mine, that if I could keep him home, and I couldn't imagine what would happen, that I wouldn't be able to have him here. But I wanted him to be home. I wanted him to be here. I needed that to do that for him. And so that was kind of a goal that was met, that he died at home in his own room, in his own space. So that was important to me.
Yeah, well, they were both lovely journeys, and well done, ladies. Well done. Well, we're about to wrap up our hour. I wanted to take a few moments to talk about what's coming up at ABODE. We have a robust volunteer program at ABODE, and next Thursday, week from tonight, on the 18th, we're having Pull Up a Chair dinner, and that's over at the Church of Reconciliation over there off of Starcrest. And we're going to have Sunny Markham from Countryside Memorial Park talk to us about natural burials. And if you've never heard this concept, come and learn. It won't cost you a thing. You'll have dinner and some wine, and learn a little bit about green burials and this wonderful concept that she came up with. And she's got a beautiful cemetery out in Lavernia, and it's going to tell us a lot about that. And we also have a doula program that's going on, and our doulas on the Saturday after that. So that's 18th to 20th. We're all going out there. And so you are welcome to join us to go out to Countryside Memorial Park and just look at it and see it up close, and what natural burial is about. This concludes our ABODE Academy 6 tonight, and we'll be starting planning for the next one. We hope to have another book club maybe later this year. And what else is coming up, Mary? What am I
Glad you asked. We have Death Cafe. And
Yes.
you can come to ABODE on Saturday and join us. We don't have any specific agenda, although we did talk about practicing how to go about having an end of life discussion with our loved one. That's 2 to 3:30, and then we have a contemplative drum circle that if we don't get rained out, we'll do at 4 o'clock on Saturday. And then if you have heard of end of life doulas or death doulas, we have a doula program, and Wayne and Sandy have been through it. Beverly, Susan Ruck, and I've been through it. So it's a 5-Saturday course on how to be an end of life doula. And if you go to our Instagram or our Facebook, you'll see some information about that. It's also on our website. So the next cohort starts Saturday, August 5th. If you would like to be an ABODE certified end of life doula, please reach out and we'll talk about it.
Great. All right, so I messed up at the beginning. I didn't do our contemplative moment to start us off, so I'm going to do it at the end. So I want you to all just kind of get in your seats and have a moment of thank you for Mary and Deanna's for sharing those beautiful stories of their lovely husbands. And again, just with all my heart, I thank you for being on the journey with you. It was such a privilege. So close your eyes and just put yourself in a quiet place and just take a deep breath and let the day roll off your shoulders. And you're going into a restful evening. And I want you to hear these words. Just as the soft rains fill the streams, pour into the rivers and join together in the oceans, so may the power of every moment of your goodness flow forth to awaken and heal all beings, those here now, those gone before, and those yet to come. By the power of every moment of your goodness, may your heart's wishes be soon fulfilled, as completely shining as the bright full moon, as magically as by a wish fulfilling gem. By the power of every moment of your goodness, may all dangers be averted and all disease be gone. May no obstacle come across your way. May you enjoy fulfillment and long life. For all in whose heart dwells respect, who follow the wisdom and compassion of the way, may your life prosper in the four blessings of old age, beauty, happiness, and strength. So I thank you all for being with us tonight. Thank you, Deanna and Mary. And
Thank you.
we will see you in the fall, and stay in touch, please.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.